Hi, I'm Jack Chew, founder and director of Physio Matters, and it's great to be back at the podcast desk with my good friend Rob Bevan, our head of partnerships at Physio Matters, to talk about how we use Cliniko. Myself and Rob have got two different practices we work for. I've got Choose Health, he's got Dyer Street Clinic. We'll go into more details about the similarities and differences of those businesses in a second, but we both work for Physio Matters to help promote and raise standards in MSK education, and also to share what is the best thing in technology and software in our industry. And so we then partner with Cliniko to help explain not only why we think it's wise for you guys to sort of start using Cliniko, not only by getting onto the software, but also maximizing its way in which you can enhance your business, workflows, etc. And I think that one of the big things we've realized in recent months from speaking to many of you is that it's all well and good doing it, but then people just want to get insights into what's been used and road tested, including by us. And we've been fascinated to hear how many of you are bothered about, well, how do you use it? And so we've decided to compile our favorite things, which we're going to then bring to you today. My clinic's quite small in South Manchester. And we've only in the last 12 months been using Cliniko. Rob's a larger MDT clinic and have been using it how long now, Rob?
10 years. 10 years,
So
I think we put it on.
you can imagine at 10 years that he's longer in the tooth on this and has insights that are far deeper than mine. But also, I think you just said, Rob, you don't even remember what it was like to transition over to Cliniko. It was that long ago.
Yeah, it was that long. And I said we were a very small team at the time, just me and my wife. We probably had a couple of hundred patients. Less of them were actually active. So the switch over was, I don't remember it being a difficult thing. Whereas if we had to switch now, the questions I would have would be very different compared to the questions I had then, which was just, do you have online booking? Cool. Okay, we're in. Like, yeah, that works.
And I think that's why we each realized we could have probably done something solo or done something separate to each other on this, but then we have so many similarities in things and features that we like, but there's also distinctions because of the different timeframes of our journeys that we thought we'd jump on together and have a back and forth about it and see how it comes out. One of the things that, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob, but I think one of the things that's like gun to head, what is your favorite thing about Cliniko is the fact that it converts so well on online bookings. That's certainly still my answer. Is that still yours?
Yeah, 100%. And if we look at the percentage of people that we have that book online, it skyrockets when people use Cliniko. And there are numerous reasons for that. I think it's firstly how you set out your online booking, and I think we can get to that one in a minute. But I think the ease that it is when you actually come to book, and the people that we have that use online booking are not particularly tech savvy. So you don't have to jump through all of these hoops. It's just simply, what service do I want? What time do I want to come in? What's my name and address? Book. And the amount of clicks and steps you go through, and you know as well as I do that the more hurdles you put into place to booking an appointment, the less likely is someone to do it. And I know that when you have to create an account and you have to put card details and you have to do lots of other steps to do it, people are less likely to book it. And I think if I remember the numbers from the marketing company are something like the landing on a Cliniko booking page to then converting to an online booking is something like 24%. Now that I might be incorrect on that, but it's in the 20s in terms of how likely someone is to convert, which is, I believe, the highest of all of the online booking platforms that there are.
Yeah, I mean it's over double what many of them are. Its second best is I think 8 or 9% down, but also a far more expensive system. That was what we won't name names. That would be ugly, wouldn't it? But yeah, generally speaking, it's always outperforming on the data. I want to just make a suggestion for those that are watching. I think people don't do this enough, and so I'm going to give you the chance to pause us in a second and go and do it. In a sec, I want you to pause this video, go and mimic your customer's journey as if they've never heard of you. Let's say they've clicked on your Google ads or they've heard from their neighbor to go and find a search for a term. And I don't care if you're using Cliniko or not. I'm just saying, just mimic your patient flow and do it. Even if you've done it a few months ago, go and do it now and then come back to this part of the video. If you're interested, I know how mine works, but I want to know how Cliniko works, then feel free to go to choosehealth.co.uk or to, I forget your URL, Rob at Dyer Street.
Yeah, dyerstreetclinic.com. Yeah.
Brilliant. So go to one of ours and follow this through. And what Rob's describing there, you'll notice, is that it immediately is then, when do you want to come in? Right? Whereas other systems are then set up an account. I don't want an account. I want an appointment. Right? And I think that people underestimate how relevant that is because there's fewer clicks and it's giving people what they want. And then the proof of the pudding's in the eating. We're seeing better conversion rates. So pause this video if you haven't already. and go and do that and then come back, because I think that that's what we really want you to understand and why that's important. Now that you're back, or if you did go and do that, Rob, tell, just because I don't think it's worth us skimming past it, what is it about as a business, an increase in online bookings compared to phone calls, emails, or other inquiry avenues that, because I think it might seem obvious, but let's spit it out.
Well, obviously, it's an admin issue. So the amount of time that it takes to book a phone call or an email, particularly, which is a massive stress. And I think the way that today's society moves, and I see this with the younger people, is they are less and less likely to pick up the phone. They are more and more likely to WhatsApp, email, or online book. So the more avenues you have, then people will obviously utilize them. And if you take away the human element, then people will even more likely be able to do it. And only people that will not use a particular service if they have to talk to a human or pick up the phone. So clinics or hairdressers or restaurants that don't have some form of online option, people will just simply not use that. And whether that's I don't know, the way that today's society is built up, but it takes out that admin time. It obviously then allows people to book at any time of day. And if you look at the percentage of appointments that are booked and when appointments are booked, we get 20-30% of appointments out a month that are booked outside of our closing hours. So that might be the morning of appointments. It's people waking up and going, I'm in pain, I need to see someone today. And you'll see the appointments at 5:30 come through. Or they get home from tennis that evening and go, oh, my knee's a bit sore. Probably should see if I've got a day off tomorrow unexpectedly. How they don't get anything tomorrow last minute. And so having that facility to people to book, again, I know we're kind of spelling this out, but for people who don't know, people will want to book your services when you are not open. So it just creates that option for people to do it.
And we also have the prepayment that we take. So at point of booking, we get people to then pay for that appointment. Now, admittedly, there is a drop off. If you choose to do that, you will have people that then would have otherwise booked but didn't have the card with them or whatever, or that was an element of friction that meant that you get a drop off. So admittedly, you will get a drop off of a few percentage points on conversion rate there that some people might not want to wear. However, the upside, which we could probably unpack a bit more later, is the decrease in late UTA and DNA rate. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because the smoothness of that integration through Stripe on Cliniko means that then you've got that process that then means it's completely automated. And another reason why, if someone's then booking online, you're not you have automated that administration, and that yes, you're still going to get the odd inquiry that comes through that says, do you do knees? And they've not given a phone number, they've not given an email address even, there's usually an email address attached to it, so you're then asking them for a phone number to get more information. Should a therapist ring them back? Should an administrator ring them back? If an admin rings them back, then they unpack their knee problem. They still might have questions before they want to book. So whilst they might come through, they are few and far between, because you can book online and you can make that process a lot smoother.
I think it also, there's less human error. And I don't know about you, but the amount of times that there's been a typo in a phone number, a typo in an email, phone lines aren't that great, elderly people, there's lots of reasons why mistakes get made, spelling names incorrectly, which is a massive thing when you send an email and it's dear so and so and you spelt their name wrong. Like, that's a really big deterrent to some people if you spelt the name wrong, even more so if you spelled it out on the phone. And I've spoken on the phone before, and I've had people call up and I'm getting them to repeat the name 2 or 3 times, and I'm typing it in thinking, I really hope this is right, because I know how important that first name is. So yes, people still get it wrong, and it's amazing when people ring and say, I haven't got an email yet. You said you're going to send me an email, and or I didn't book an appointment on that day, and I can look and say, well, you actually booked it online yourself, so you chose that appointment and you put in these details. If they're incorrect, I'm really sorry, but it's obviously your human error, not ours, for once. So it does reduce that as well, because people mostly spell their name right compared to, admin front desk issues.
And you've got to think about your own technology as well. The fact that you're getting autofill on your own phone or device is useful. Now, mistakes can still happen, but it just means that process is just smoother, fewer and fewer clicks, including even for filling fields out in forms, things like Apple Pay, Google Pay, Android Pay. You've got all these different opportunities whereby things are becoming smoother and decreasing that friction. I want to make sure we don't shoot past it. And I can't remember how high tech we're doing this edit, but it'd be smart if we are doing overlays or at least referencing the fact that then when you go onto Cliniko as a patient, when you book in and stuff, you don't necessarily then you might not be thinking exactly what time you want to see someone next week, but you might know that you need an evening. And the fact that they can then, by color coordination, know when there's evening availability, morning availability, afternoon
Mm.
availability. I underestimated that when we were moving over, when we
Yeah.
started working with Cliniko. And even patients will name that. Sometimes I'm asking them, I'm interested. How did you find our system, particularly in the early days when we were transitioning? Now, sometimes they'll mention that just to, it's really convenient, really smooth, really like
Mm.
that. I needed an evening and I knew you had one because it said, and they didn't have to go fishing for it, finding out which
Yeah.
clinician. And so
Yeah.
that I found really useful. And again, I thought we'd just give some visuals here if we can. One thing I did want to make sure I got you to unpack though, because I think you guys do this really well, and we're trying to aspire to that at Choose Health a bit more as well, is how then you set up and differentiate various
Mm.
different services and clinicians. So can you explain that and how you feel that that optimizes that online booking process?
Yeah, so the way that it works is that you put your particular services into categories. So when you, as a patient, look online, you are shown the categories that are offered at the clinic. Because obviously, if you see a physio, you might have different types of physio appointments. If you see a podiatrist, you might have different types of podiatrist appointments. So you categorize by the category type. So we have chiro, physio, massage, podiatry, and a few others kind of specialist type services. So that's what the first barrier is that the patient sees. Now, automatically, Cliniko will put that into alphabetical order. So if you have B12 injections and that's one of your categories, that's going to show up top. But you might not only offer that, you might only offer it once a month, and it might be not the service that you want to be first and foremost if you are a physio, chiro, osteo clinic, and that's kind of your swan song. So the way that we run it and the way that I know a lot of other people have structured it now is to number your categories. So you can number your categories 1.chiropractic, 2.physio, 3.osteopathy, and then that is how they show up in the system. And then you can then move other services further down the list to kind of reflect how you want them to be shown to the patient. As an aside for that, and I think now's probably a good time to bring it up, something that we've brought it up or that we've done is a little trick that we do is at our particular clinic, the way that we run is we don't really have a huge bias towards you need to see a chiro for this, a physio for this, an osteo for that. We advertise we're very much competency-based practice. If you have sciatica, it doesn't matter who you see, we're going to treat this particular case very similar. We have a next available appointment, which is essentially a help, I'm in pain, and I don't care who I see type appointment. And people can book that whenever they want to. It's the top of the list and it just says next available appointment. And although people can book next available chiropractor, they can book next available physio, they might just want to see everyone. So we've created this specialist appointment type, which has chiro, physio, osteo, sports therapy, sports rehab. And within those, they will just be shown the next available appointment. And it's quite well explained. And it says your appointment will be with one of these particular professions. They are all diagnosed or trained to diagnose, examine, and treat in a very similar way. If they feel another member of your team would be more suitable, they will tell you that or book you in with them at your follow up or whatever it might be. And probably 15 to 20% of new patients book that appointment type. So these are people who don't care who they see and they just want to see someone. And whether that's through the clinic reputation, whether it's through their own knowledge, or they just really don't care, or we've explained it well enough, it's really quite popular. So it's proven really as good add-on for our online booking services.
And in some cases, of course, in different clinics and different styles of practice, those distinctions might really matter in your
Mm.
MDT. Or it might be that you're of a professionally tribal persuasion that you're not someone that feels that that distinction shouldn't be made front and center. That's fine too. We're suggesting an option, a workaround of a sorts that suits
Mm.
some clinics and not others. But similarly, if the patient choice is powerful, there's no one at Dire Straits or Choose Health that's stopping someone seeing a physio or a carer if they'd rather. And that's one of the things that
Exactly.
people need to make clear as well. It's like people are worried that then there's something deceptive about that, or someone's actually saying, I want to see a physio, and they're actually being seen a carer, and then we're just crossing our fingers that they're fine with that. There's certainly none of that, but it's just that that is an option. And also on a business level, especially me and Rob are really passionate about this. You'll have heard us talk about this before. We run MSK services, and we're passionate about the raising standards in pain and injury. And we should be reading from a similar evidence base. And the fact that the flavour of certificate on our walls becomes less and less important over time, and the background can be relevant, but fundamentally the aspired practice should be pretty similar. If indeed a patient's not bothered about that and wants to give that a go, then they should have an opportunity to do that, especially if it means they might not have to wait as long as they would have done if they were
Mm,
just to be more tribal than, or have to do what they would have done if we didn't have this next available. So
yeah.
it's nice to have that option, but we're not suggesting it's
Mm,
mandatory at all.
yeah. No, yeah, I fully agree. And we have it both for new patients and for treatments. So you might have someone that's a regular physio patient and then has now just hurt their knee and they want to see the next available person and they can go that way.
Got that. And also, it's something that really does help you to challenge your internal education standards and consistency as well, is to make sure that that is something that you then have that more liberal cross cover, because we're often working in small teams. These aren't
For sure.
massive, extensive services. And so having really crisp distinctions can have some upside in terms of an implied specialization or a real
Mm,
specialization. But then you've got challenges on cross cover, you've got challenges on recruitment and retention and stuff that makes it even more acute. So we are massive advocates and fans of that as a style of practice. However, we do accept that this is just us admitting to a preference that certainly Cliniko is useful if you have that preference, but
mm,
it's also no worse if you don't, and you can make those distinctions if you'd rather. The next place I wanted to go with you, Rob, is to talk a little bit about communication through the system with the patient. And so we can take it from when that patient books, they then get automated comms straight out the gates, but then also you can then dictate carefully what it is they see, how they see it, at what time frame, what reminders, email, SMS, etc. Tell me about how you've optimized that and what you'd recommend for our viewers.
yeah. So, I mean, I think it needs some playing around. And I think that you're never going to please everyone. Some patients want day of reminders. Some people want 2 days before. Some people want 24 hours before the appointment. Everybody's slightly different. And I know we've experimented with a few different workarounds or different options. And someone doesn't like something at some point, and someone's going to not be happy. Now, the way that if I start with reminders, so the way that we do the reminders is we do email and SMS reminder. They're really easy to set up on Clinico themselves into just the settings and the reminder sections. We do an email the day before and an SMS the day before. They go out around lunchtime the day before, and within that, it's just this is a reminder of your particular appointment at this time tomorrow, and that's it. And we know that people often pick it up because that is when you'll get the people who recall and say or call up and say, "I'm sorry, I can't. I've just had your message. I can't make that appointment tomorrow." The SMS is obviously a bit shorter and it's a bit to the point. This is your appointment tomorrow at this time. The email is a bit longer and it's just a reminder about the appointment. It's kind of where we are. We have a link for if you are a new patient, you can fill out this form, and it just means that anyone who's booked the appointment by mistake has got that information in there as well. It's also got a bit more about what to expect on the appointment, whether they're a first timer or not. It's useful information if they haven't been in a while. So we've really tried to write that in a human voice. And I'm happy to share some examples, the way, if that's useful for people, the way that we've done it. We've geared all of
It's
our
another one of
appointments.
those where we might challenge Jim or Farouk to actually put
Do
something
something
on
in there. Yeah.
on the screen,
And
maybe.
we do that. And we also have biased it slightly, knowing our average population. So we know that the average people that come and see the podiatrist, it's slightly different. You know, the average age for the podiatry patients is a lot older, and like the routine podiatry patients compared to the people that come and see the physio. There's not that the physio doesn't see old people and the
Yeah.
podiatrist doesn't see young people, but we know the average age is about a 30-year gap there. So it just means the
Yeah.
language use is slightly different when it comes to that. So we've really tried to put that human voice. Everything you need in there is in that particular email, whether it's finding us. You've probably had patients who have come to see you, they've come to see you 3 or 4 times, but they still forget where to come, or they still forget how to check in. And it's that older cohort that sometimes that happens to. So we just put as much
And I
information as we
think one of
can
the
in there.
things as well is some people are concerned about the robots being everywhere and it feeling a little bit call centery and they feel like things have become depersonalized. I think anything that you can do to help put their mind at rest and to therefore put a human voice to it is technically an automation, of course. But the times that people will put something generic together and just have used the default reminder
Mm,
when actually they could have taken the edge off it, they could have made it a bit friendlier both by visuals and by voice. I think that people underestimate
yeah.
that, and it's a way of just de-risking it. So you're using the upside of automation and technology, but also recognizing that human factor that make you unique compared to the default settings of the
Yeah,
software.
for sure. And obviously you can put all those placeholders into the confirmation reminders. You can put first name, last name, appointment date, and all those so they auto populate. The big question is whether you use first name or surname. And I know that I don't know what you do. It'd be interesting to hear, but we use first name, or we use full name, depending if it's a new patient. We usually just use the full name. just because you don't want to risk. But we have experimented with first name, and we've had people actually say maybe it's just where the town that I'm in, I'm not sure. But people are like, no, it's Mrs. Smith. And if you're not addressed by Mrs. Smith, you get a tongue lashing. So I don't know whether what you do, whether that's sometimes I don't care enough because I'm like, if you're reacting, I'll call you Mrs. Smith, that's fine. But majority of people probably wouldn't mind that much.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's not only the quantity of any challenge, it's the veracity of which it might come that might move that policy.
Yeah,
We use full name, and the problem with that is it does really then feel more automated. So we then sort of try and compensate for that with the rest of the copy.
mm,
Because of the risk that you're describing. It feels too formal to be Mr. Smith, but it feels a bit too casual for some people's taste to be that, especially because again on Cliniko they might well have filled the form in thoroughly. It will also put their not nickname like a really casual nickname, but if they go by Jim rather than James and stuff, then that suddenly can feel over familiar to some, and they'll then potentially even regret sharing that.
yeah,
So we do go full name, and it has its ups and downsides and stuff, but that's something that you need to play around with. And also, like we've said before, just don't underestimate these details. Get them
mm,
right. Yes, we say play around with it, but once you're happy with it, you can be leaving that alone. We're not saying you need to A/B test this every week, but we are
yeah,
saying that some people are complacent sometimes with these levels of
mm,
detail, and we really do
yeah.
think these things matter. Unless you've anything else to add on that, Rob, with regards to comms, because I know that is there anything else you guys do? We've only talked about reminders, haven't we? Sorry. So yeah, there
Yeah.
probably is more there, isn't there? So
The, the,
what other patient comms do you have as integrations within Clinical?
the integration within Cliniko is kind of the confirmation, which I separate from reminders as well. So this is that welcome to the clinic, especially if they're a new patient. So we have different comms for different types of practitioners and different types of services. So we have it all set up separately. So if you book in to see a foot health practitioner or a podiatrist, or we book in for a massage, or we book in to see kind of physio, osteo, chiro, you'll get different. You'll get a different confirmation email. In that, we've put the kind of, it's essentially titled "Your Appointment: Everything You Need to Know." And this is where to go, what to bring, what to expect is a big part of it, and like what to bring because people don't know what to wear, what to bring to an appointment. Wear loose gym gear, things you don't mind exposing the body part. We have gowns and shorts for you here to wear if you're just coming from work and you don't want to bring everything. So essentially you can bring nothing or you can bring everything, but it includes everything that a patient might want to know for the appointment. And some people, as you had experience, I'm sure, bring in that printout and they'll have highlighted things that they've got to bring with them, or whether it's a list of medication. The chiropody, foot health, podiatry appointments, again, they're phased slightly differently. We don't need to say bring loose gym gear for the majority of kind of clinical podiatry. It's wear shoes and socks you can slip on and off easily. So we kind of, the language is geared there. We also then have the new patient form in it, where we have the link to, if this is your first time coming to the clinic, please complete this form. A short form. If you don't want to, or you're, essentially not very tech savvy, we have a paper copy for you to fill out in person if you don't want to. So give people the choice, and we let people. And 95% of people fill out the paperwork in advance. Most people who don't are not the people who can't. They're the people who are just a bit busy and have forgotten more than anything else.
No, that makes sense. And I think that that's where that tailored communication, for the same reason we were just saying on the reminder, really matters. And the fact that you don't have to just use a generic one, regardless of what the invite for the appointment is and confirmation for the appointment is crucial to that tailoring that we're on about. Right? And it's useful to know that, because people don't always know, that you can make that adjustment by appointment type on Clinico. One of the things that I wanted to sort of highlight on that is, are you attaching or managing to brand that in a certain way? Is it just the copy within an email, or is it something that you can also then link and create work streams from that?
So no, so ours is just a copy in an email. So we've kept that as simple as possible from the inside of Clinico. So then, because then it auto populates with Clinico. So I know there are third-party plugins you can use for form filling in and things like that as well, and use it and build it into a CRM and that type of stuff. But we haven't. And I know that there are workarounds where you can use it as more like a lead capture, and then you can use Zapier and plug it into Mailchimp and things, which I'm in the process of trying to look at, but I haven't actually
Mm,
physically run with yet, because then you can use whether that's a lead capture form from Instagram or download our free thing from our website and get that into a lead capture. And I believe you can set that up with MailChimp and Zapier that talk to then Cliniko. So when the patient's then booked an appointment, they fall out of that lead capture loop.
And I think that there's links to things like Salesforce and stuff that people want to use that as CRMs. I know Jim's been experimenting on our side with the contact forms and stuff, and the ways in which you can get that automated. So I know that is an option. It's interesting that neither of us are using it, but for those that are listening in that might be thinking that that's a crucial part of what they're doing already, let us know how that's going, if it's something with Cliniko or if it's something that you use on another software, considering Cliniko, and that's something that would be a sticking point. Then just because we're not using it doesn't mean it's not capable, and I certainly know that there are a lot of more technical links to CRMs that we're not using, but that are well established and are pretty thorough. The next thing I wanted to touch on, Rob, and definitely not worth us hovering here for too long, because I think that sometimes a note system is a note system to some extent. I think that really that can be overplayed. I think it's very 5 or 10 years ago for us to be sort of celebrating digital documentation safely stored in a cloud, accessible. But one of the things that I find particularly useful, and certainly when onboarding new staff and getting them au fait with it right away, is the fact that it has its simplicity. And also, for me, I'm a soap notes free text type guy. Others want that template in, and other services sometimes want that consistency between clinicians and want to make sure that then there's certain boxes that get ticked. Regardless of whether you're free text or template, or you've got that variety within your service, the ways in which you can personalize that as individual clinicians and individual clinics is second to none. And that smoothness is something I've been impressed with Cliniko.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And I'm the same as you. I'm more just a free soap note type person. I have in the past preferred much more of a template. And I think obviously when you're starting out and you're new to this, I think having that template is really useful. You can then obviously have templates per staff member. You could have a Jack new patient intake form, which is your questions that you like to ask and fill them out in the order that you like to do that. You can have a physio one, you can have a chiro one, you can make your own. We have obviously a pelvic health, we have podiatry, we have a physio that likes to do his own way. We have a vestibular one, we have a pediatric one. So there are bits in there which people have preferred. Some people, although they have it there, don't use it. And sometimes they do use it, so they can chop and change. We then also have ones per body part. And when we had a few people onboarding and they were not quite confident, worried about forgetting stuff, they liked having that fallback. So we have a shoulder one, a hip and groin one, a headache one, and it's just a few things of, here's a new patient form specific to headaches in case the bare bones here, but are there a few things that can separate your history here just to take it up that level? Here's a couple of extra questions that hopefully you remember, but if you don't, there's a bit of a fallback, which you can just do if you need to. So again, a lot of people use them at the beginning when they first onboarded. Now, actually, they use less and less.
An example of a template that we do use is that we have certain products that only come up now and again. For example, we have this community walking group, of which then every 6 months they get a set of standardized tests. And off the back of that, they then might want to personalize their strengths and weaknesses that they've found from that testing sequence and want to work with a clinician. They get seen, they get a home exercise program. It's not really injury assessment as much as it's like, I want to work on my balance, I want to work on my lower limb strength. And then they'll be seeing at 3 months to see how that's going. And then again, by 6 months, they're redoing the batch testing as a group. That's called trundle training. And it needs a template in part because our clinicians are sometimes only seeing one or two of those every 6 months. It needs to be structured. It needs to be thorough. It's often data focused. And therefore, they want to aspire to making sure they've ticked those boxes, right? So if they had to freestyle that, it'd just be like, oh, I can't remember how to do this. Where's the document, right? They're going to be off checking the intranet. Whereas that's a sensible thing for a template to exist because they won't be able to pick each other's patients up more cleanly. And so whilst, yes, I'm a free text guy, as a clinic owner, I want to make sure that there are opportunities where we want to be consistent. And so having that combination of those two things is great. We did a video recently, and we should again link on the screen if we can, about how Cliniko have got the opportunity to actually then, if you want to sketch out a contact intake form, you can then just scan that, and Cliniko as a system will then detect and digitize that form. I know that that's coming, if not already here, for notes, forms, and templates as well, which is brilliant. And so I had an example that I used for that back in my NHS days when I was working as an APP. We had paper notes, and I had my own sort of crib sheet pro forma just because you needed to rattle rattle through that quickly. And I just wanted to make sure that that was there. I then scanned that in and put it to the test, and it's amazing how well it picked up literally everything and was able to replicate
Amazing.
that. And so
Yeah.
you've even got that opportunity to think. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'd like a template, but I can't be bothered to actually then piece it together. Cliniko is the
Yeah.
software that will then bring that together as well. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, it does the simple stuff well. And I said we
Yeah.
weren't going to milk it necessarily on notes. But have you anything else that you add that you do on a notes system level that we've not really mentioned there, Rob, that you think could be worth
Yeah,
emphasis?
there's a couple of other kind of tricks that we use that I quite enjoy for the notes thing. The first thing is we have a communication note, so which is just a blank box of phone calls, communications, and things like that that can work quite well, which is simply just comms. And if when you ring a phone call, ring a patient, you can put the details in. You can often pin a note. So if people aren't aware, you can pin a note to the top, so it stays at the top of that patient's file. And I know there's a workaround that I don't personally use, but I know that a lot of people do use is they pin a case summary. So there's a quick summary of this patient of Mrs. Smith is 6 weeks post ACL. The focus here is on X, Y, and Z. His range of motion was this at this date, where goal is to get him back to playing football at this level. And there's a summary of that patient at the top, and you can pin that at the very top. So then anyone taking over this patient can at a glance roughly know where this patient is. And that's like a rolling document that they can just add to at the end of, every week or every month, whatever it might be with this particular patient. And then any pertinent information can go in there, whether it's your kids' names, your dog's names, other information that can work, to build that rapport that you have with the patient.
Mm.
That can work quite well.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's always you. You might have the sense to make a note of someone's favorite holiday destination or football team they support or dog's name, but you don't necessarily want to then bury it deep into the notes where you can't find it anyway. So
Yeah,
having that accessibility is useful for that. Otherwise, it can go unused, and that's a mistake. So
that's good.
I like that as a tip.
And on
Also
that,
with
you
the
can,
go on.
so I was going to say, on that reminder, you can do the same for the medical alerts at the
I
top.
was just going to ask.
You
Well, I was
I
just
was
going
going
to
to
ask.
say,
Yeah.
okay, with those medical alerts, you can put any pertinent information, history of cancer, gallbladder surgery 6 months ago, 3 children. But yeah, you can put that in there. And then using third-party plugins, they can read that data. So you can use a program like Clinic Apps, which can actually scan for those medical alerts and it can send information based on that. So if you want to send all of your patients with NeoA a particular booklet that you've made on NeoA or particular, prom score, whatever it might be, you can then, based on a medical trigger, as soon as you put that trigger in, it then sends an email in flow to that patient. And we have it for Google review. So if I ask you in person, say, would you be so kind as to leave us a Google review? You can scan a QR code here, but also I can just put Google review tag on your file, and then you'll get an email that says, hello, as Rob alluded to, would you be happy to leave a Google review? So you can do that as well.
Yeah, and I think that learning to use clinic apps like that, we definitely are aspiring that direction, and we've heard this from you before, but we've definitely not optimizing that yet. I think that I can see lots of service development potential for that as well. If you imagine in your service, if you the fact that you're wanting to flag someone as diabetic might mean that if you've got a fledgling diabetic foot care service, it makes sense for it to do that. Now, obviously, you might not always want to have that as an automation, but remembering that putting someone to be diabetic isn't a medical emergency alert compared to an unstable epileptic or something like that, or
Mm.
that you might want there as a must know. But if you then made the choice to do that, knowing that it was going to then trigger something that you might have already teed
Mm.
them up for, that's the sort of thing that helps to offer a thoroughness of service that really will help an owner to make that smooth and to make.
Yeah.
We all know that it's difficult you might create policies or make suggestions for signposting and upselling, but to actually make it smoother and to make it cleaner for both customer and
Mm.
clinician is all for the good. And so I think there's
Yeah.
definitely more I can do on that. Every time I hear you talk about those integrations and stuff makes me realize how much work we've still to do. But as I said, there's like
Mm.
a 9 year gap between our
Yeah.
experience on this, which is I'll give
Yeah.
myself a little bit of leeway. Um,
Yeah.
I want to move on if we can to reports and insights, which is definitely where we put our business owners hats on rather than clinicians. I think I'll admit that as it stands, I consider, compared to one or two other systems, I consider this to be a weakness of Clinico's. It's something that I know they're aware of. I've also been impressed with their tolerance of our feedback for that and the fact that I know what's coming down the pipe for them to correct for some of this. But I do want to make sure I flag that as being something that, compared to some other systems, it is a bit of a shortcoming. However, that's partly because I was kind of spoilt for what we had from other systems. And then I realize increasingly there's very little that I miss. I think there's an upside to the simplicity as well. And so whilst I think it is a weakness for those that really want nth degree detail, it's actually made me more efficient for what detail I can glean. And I think things like treatment completion notes, recall reports, that sort of stuff, that's pretty strong. And that the actual financial data, where I think that people sometimes consider it weaker compared to say nuclear TM3, etc. I know it's going to improve for what we've got coming down the pipe that we get insights from Cliniko. But even as it stands, as the size of our practice, I admittedly don't find myself really craving that much more that it can provide me, if I'm honest. Does that problem scale with size as you can show? Is that something that you're chomping at the bit for more, or what have you found with the reporting?
I think what I find with data is you can get overwhelmed by data. And I think it's very easy to want more and want more and want more. And whatever level you have, you'll want to further insight into that particular data. I think that there are better ways to manage a practice than bury your head in the data. I'm not saying people that do that continually, but I think that for what Clinico provides, it does give you a good enough overview to scale at size. I think if you want more data and more specific things, especially kind of per practitioner, because that's where it does fall down. It's good at kind of segmenting appointment types. It's good at looking at revenue per service and per things. But when you want to look at things per practitioner, including kind of DNA rates and recall rates and those things, that's where it's a bit trickier to kind of find that information. So I think that if you have problems, then I think maybe you need to start digging a little bit more into the data. I think if you're happy where you are and you're not losing patients out the bottom, and you have a way of tracking that, because all the data is there, it's just how you filter that data into your own personal dashboard. So whether that's with an Excel document or whether it's with a third-party plugin, I think it's all accessible. And then it just comes down to how much data you actually want to take out of it and how much you actually
Mm.
care about. Because I know people, you probably do the same. People that spend too long looking at data and they're focusing on the wrong metrics here. Whereas I think there are a few metrics that I look at regularly. For example, short-term cancellation. I look at cancellations. I know that as a clinic, we don't have a lot of DNAs and cancellations full stop. So if there is a flag of, oh, we're having a lot this month, or we know having a lot this week, or this particular person's having a lot compared to the rest of the clinic, then it's an outlier. And then I'll kind of look a bit further as to why are they always happening at the same place and go a bit more detailed. But generally, I won't use anything more than what's on Clinico on a monthly basis.
No, it's really interesting to see because I was ready for you to explain where that was a shortcoming. So it's interesting that it isn't. Pick a few KPIs, guys, or two, three max, and
Yeah.
lean into that. And then for me as well, it's a great opportunity for you to then have. If there's not a massive gap between what you're pulling as a report and what you're willing to then happy to share with your team on a appropriate basis,
Yeah.
then that can be really nice as well. And like Rob's saying, if you can then notice are there market forces affecting cancellation rates or new patient slowing rates on a
Mm.
month-to-month basis, or is this an individual site related thing? Is this a clinician related thing? It's
Yeah.
like this is all useful. But if you
Mm.
over obsess on it and the paralysis by analysis that can occur,
That's the
people
phrase I was
thinking
looking
that
for. Yeah.
that's the way to do business is overindulging the objective thinking that the answer is going
Yeah.
to reveal itself to you. And unfortunately, guys, that ain't leadership. And
Mhm.
so we've got plenty more we can talk about another day on what would
Mm.
be a sensible balance of that. And if you're interested in that content, then of course we'll prioritize it further later in the
Yeah.
year. We've got a bit of a quick fire round now, Rob, before to see us out. I want to go through a few little categories. I'm going to give you a subheading, and then you're going to fire it back to me. Feel free to ask me, especially on the third party stuff that I know we want to go into that we've been using for tech here. But when it comes to practitioner diary management, what are the big tips on that?
Practitioner diary management, color coding
Right.
per appointment type. So when you can look at it really quickly, I've got a new patient coming in. All of our new patients are bright green. Follow-ups are all blue, so shockwave are black, massage are yellow, so you can look at a diary and you know who's going what, who's new, where does the shockwave need to be. We have phone calls and to-do lists, which is a bit of a hack that we fairly recently brought in, but I think that is really useful for people. You can color code the unavailable blocks. And this is a new thing that Clinico just brought in, where you can have different types of unavailable blocks and you can name them different things. So we have unavailable blocks, which are called phone call to do and phone call done, and to do done, and they're just red and green. So then if I book in your diary a phone call for Mrs. Smith and I've booked it for you, it'll be booked in as red. Then once you've done it, you've just changed it to green. And then as a glance, the front desk management know this has been done, this has been done, this hasn't been done. You can look at your diary ahead or previously and say, oh, actually, I didn't do that thing. Same thing for to-do lists. And then we do the same with our
Stops you
reception
having
to-do lists.
stop you having to double up with things like other
Yeah,
tools like Asana or
yeah,
what have you that others
exactly.
might need to use. Love it. What about reception and admin efficiencies? How could that be maximized? What's the top tip on that?
So that was probably one of them, using the to-do list, and then creating the to-do list as a person in the diary. So then they can actually share notes between each other. Onboarding, especially new people, we used to print out the daily schedule, which is quite
Right.
a good habit to get into anyway, especially when someone's new and they want just to look in advance at who's coming. And for months, new receptionists used to like write notes on each patient coming in by hand, by printed schedule, just to get used to it. And then as they were familiar with the schedule, they could then type it in and put things in. So that's quite a good one to print it out. And then if anything goes A over T and actually you've got a power cut, you've got a printed diary schedule just in case anything
Gotcha.
fails.
I've talked earlier about how clinicians pick this up and run with it really quickly and quicker than other systems we've used before. What about admin staff? That's an area where obviously we've been blessed with a couple of administrators that have then stuck with us and were pivotal to the transition. But because we're smaller, you've then over the course of 10 years, is it as easy to use for administrators as it is for clinicians?
So we had a new staff member come in today. This is quite a good time for me to say
All
this
right,
as a
I
as,
didn't know
as
that.
administrator.
That looks
Holiday.
planted as a question now, doesn't it? I
It
didn't
almost
realize
does.
that.
It wasn't, yeah, it wasn't. And it was essentially holiday cover. One of our team members' daughters wanted a few hours. And so we trained her how to use the system last week. And she could use the system within 10 minutes, if that. It is so self-explanatory. The example I use a lot to other people that are looking to switch to Cliniko is my mum can use it. And that's a good example that if my mum can do it, anyone can use it because it's just as simple as drag and drop, book. And if you make a mistake, what people may not realize is you can just message Cliniko and say, I've just deleted an appointment. I wasn't sure where it was or where I've deleted the appointment from or who was meant to be there. I've archived it. I can't get it back. What do I do? Cliniko have all of these logs and their help chat function is so useful for anything that you need help with. I've done this before and I've deleted an appointment and I've gone, there was someone there at 10 o'clock and now they're not there. Did I do something? Have I dragged them to a different place? And Cliniko can reinstate that for me or can search the log to find out what cock up I've done.
Love it. Right. We'll both give our top three. And on this, one of the things I like about Clinico as a company, right, is that they have always had an open API and they love nothing more than linking in with other software and they want things to be efficient. They are not trying to slow you down. They're not trying to add friction and they're working with various different technical tech companies across the world. What are your top three integrations?
Top three. So rehab my patient because it syncs with the notes. So the rehab plans go straight to the notes and vice versa. So that saves so much time compared to when they didn't integrate. Clinic apps, who do all of our automated recalls and newsletters, which I think are really useful. Our nutritionist uses one called Foodzilla, which links very similar to Rehab My Patient, but for nutrition and diet plans, all
Right.
sync across all the patient stuff. So those are three excellent ones. I could go on. There's MailChimp. There's loads of other ones as well, which jump in as
I'm
well.
not
What
letting
about
you. I
you?
said three, didn't I? You're
I
getting
said
greedy.
three, yeah.
You're being a Foodzilla. Right. I would say I'd add Kinvent to that. We're using the Kinvent dynamometers and force plates, and I didn't think an integration would be that important, but I could sort of understand why getting the data in there and not having to manually enter it would be fine. But that's been one thing. But the bigger issue is just the ability to get onto the iPad that we use for the kit and immediately have the patient details synced. And the way in which that just smooths things off and not having to reconsent them onto that
Mm,
device because they've already said that that's fine and they're already on the system is absolutely brilliant. So that two-way integration with Kinvent
yeah.
is good. I'd second the Rehab My Patient thing, especially because even with Rehab My Patient, any comms that goes through Rehab My Patient, be that emails or WhatsApp messages that go on there, then that two-way also applies to the documentation, which makes it more secure because both
Mm,
systems are independently secure, but the fact that they're communicating into that central patient record is great. You don't want to be then
Mm.
noticing a back and forth on email or WhatsApp that had occurred on Rehab My Patient that then doesn't transpose to Cliniko. So that's great that that's there. And then I wanted top three, and I've managed to leave myself without a third one. What's it might come back to me, I'm not sure. But certainly that with our hardware and integrating that, especially for larger clinics that are going to have several devices across different parts of their practice, it's really useful for that to be communicating.
Yeah.
What would you say if you had to? I'm going to give you one rather than three this time, Rob, to finish. What would you say is the number one underrated feature that you don't really hear people raving about that you've found to be particularly useful?
Um, Underrated feature, you really put me on the spot now. It's a really, really difficult one. Underrated feature, I think, is probably the open API. And I think the ability to do that and whatever software that you currently use to manage your business, the chance of that integrating with Clinico and the ability to pull data from Clinico is second to none, really. So, simply you want to build a business dashboard, you can pull all of your data from Clinico using their open API to build your own data dashboard with whatever you want to. So having that as an underrated, I think, is a massive underrated thing. There are so many things we've spoken about that get spoken about all the time. That is one which very rarely gets spoken about in kind of day-to-day conversations with Clinico. But if something that you're already using, the chance of then using that is really quite high. And I think if I can add two, it's the chat function. That people don't use the chat function to ask Cliniko for help when they really should.
Yeah, and especially because that's a real strength that people underestimate as well, isn't it? The fact that there's that ability for them to lean in to support you. You're not on your own. You're not crossing your fingers that it sorts. And also,
Yeah.
I know it sounds funny as an underrated feature, but if I was picking one, I'd just say the stability. I've just not had any downtime. It's
Yeah.
something that is just like you just take it for granted. Like I don't get
Yeah.
into work wondering. I wonder this week which hour might be down. And unfortunately, there's software out there that means
Really.
every third week they're dropping. I mean, you just look. Rob didn't even know this. He's been with Clinical 10 years. It's like
Yeah.
there are software out there. Most of them are pretty stable. Don't get me wrong. But just imagine the business disruption that can occur if even every now and again it's down for a
Yeah.
couple of hours at a crucial
I think
time.
it's done once in 9 years that I can
That's
remember.
interesting because obviously
Yeah.
that's not this year, so I don't know that. But it's
Yeah.
amazing how stable it is, and that's because we consider investing in the biz. I'm going to leave it there. But one thing I just want to make sure I mention, of course, we're fans of Clinico. We've especially becoming more so in the year that we've been using it and partnering as Physio Matters. We work with them. They advertise with us. Of course, we're in a commercial partnership with them, partly because we know that this is something that's really enhancing our business journey together. We then also have been really impressed with them wanting to raise care
Mhm.
standards in MSK and leaning into us, asking us for advice as to how they can refine their software. That's that bilateral relationship that made them then a partner rather than an advertiser. And any tech company that wants to develop that
Mhm.
self-improvement with our patients and clinicians' interests in mind and work with us as business owners is certainly getting a thumbs up from us as Physio Matters. So that's why we work with them. Go to clinico.com/physio matters to get your 3-month free trial on us. And I don't think we've got any examples of people that have done that and then not signed up yet, Rob. I think what's happened is
No.
the hit rate on that is crazy, which tells us
Yeah.
that you're enjoying it, and the feedback we've got from that has been brilliant. So do check that
Yeah.
out if you haven't already. Thank you for tuning into this, and any other suggestions you've got as to how we can help you to maximize and optimize your use of technologies and softwares, clinical or otherwise, give us a shout. We will build it for you. Take care.